Welcome to Rick's Scale Model Fix and part 4 of Airfix's brand new Canadair Sabre F Mark IV in 48 scale. At the end of part 3 we saw the conclusion of the painting stages of the model, and we put a gloss coat on, ready for the handling and application of the decals. So off camera I've spent about 2 hours a day for a week just applying all the stenciled data, the national insignia and the aircraft identification marks. These have worked well being printed by cartograph, so let's take a quick look at a demonstration of how to apply decals to the underwing serial number and roundels. So taking a look at the paint chart and the decal placement guide, we're going to add these two decals here as a brief demonstration. So we've got decal number 8 and decal number 138, so they've been located off the decal sheet and they sat here next to me on the bench just waiting for their turn to be applied. So we have some fresh clean water, and we've got tweezers, knife, paintbrush that's never been used for anything other than decals, some cotton buds. So let's have a look at how we go about adding a decal. So we're going to work on this wing section and we're going to add the aircraft serial number. So we're going to place this in the warm water. That takes about 10-15 seconds just to release the decal from the backing sheet. We're then going to moisten the area that the decal is going to be applied, and we're going to simply slide this into place, trying not to stretch or deform the decal. And we're just working on the port wing and they've been added. So we're just going to put some decal setting solution on those. And then we're going to add the ones to the other side. So we've just selected the item from the decal sheet and we're just going to cut numbers off, as they have a habit of coming off and getting stuck underneath. So we're going to place this in our dish of water just for about 20 seconds or so, and then we're going to find the location on the model and this will be added. So just checking the location. So there's a panel here, so it looks like the B is level with that and it runs along that panel line. So it will cover the holes for the pylons, which is why we've not added the pylons at this point. And we're just going to slide the decal gently into position, keeping it wet with some water that we're just going to brush on so that it doesn't deform or stretch. And then we're just going to position it with some water under to keep it moving, and we're just going to slide it into position without wrinkling it all up like I've just done. Just gently moving it along until we get it into the right position. So just checking with the other one there, and it needs to just move along, and there's a panel, access panel there that we're just going to line the side of the B up with. And there we go. So we've just got the X there has become a little bit out of kilter, so just add a bit more water, pull it into shape. So these Airfix decals, there's no carrier film between the markings to sort of keep them in alignment, so which is a good thing. But also it just needs a little bit more care to make sure that you don't pull things out of alignment unnecessarily. And there we go. So we'll have the roundel now. and then we're just going to slide that into place. So we're just adding some Decal red over the top of this decal now with a clean paintbrush, and we're just going to leave that now to do its magic, work its magic, and hopefully when we return we've got the decals snuggled down into those panel lines and rivet details. So while we're waiting for the decals to dry, I've just been working on the nose gear leg. Everything fits just as the instructions describe. It's quite well detailed, and as we saw, this has been previously painted. It's been given a wash and then glued into place with the nose gear door that does actually need a decal on it, hence why we've done it at this stage of the build. So all I've got to do is just to add the main gear door itself, so we'll just clean this up before we drop it in place. And this quite stout location points on the model, it's quite strong, so hopefully it will sit right, which it does. And we're just going to drop in some Tamiya quick set. Just to hold it in place, just checking its alignment. Everything's spot on, and we'll just leave that now to dry. So we got the nose gear leg on and the associated doors, and the wheels do have a flat spot, so just make sure that they're in the right position. And then we moved on to the main gear, and again quite simple but looks pretty good once it's done. The camera can focus. So we're getting to the stage where we need to add the wash. So the model is definitely a tail sitter, so we're going to need some nose weight in there. Now fortunately with Airfix applying FOD guards, we can just drop the nose weight down the intake and put the FOD guard in place. So I'll show you how to do that later. So we're going to add a wash, and for this we're going to use Flory Models Weathering Wash Dark Dirt. So it's a clay based water product, or a water based clay product. So we've just decanted a little bit into a dish. I'm just going to add a little bit of water just to thin it down a little bit, just so it doesn't become a little bit too overpowering. And literally we're just going to apply this over all the panel lines. We don't need to be careful or anything like that. We're just going to slop it on. Just making sure that we get a good coverage on all the panel detail. And the hinges for the flaps, etc. Make sure you go over the decals and get some of the wash into the panel lines around there. It's also worth mentioning that the decals have been sealed with a gloss coat, and the reason for that is we don't want any of this wash seeping under the decal and getting trapped under the carrier film, as we'll never get it removed and it'll leave a sort of nasty mark under your decal. So as you can see, quite quick. Just picking the wash up on the brush, moving it around. Making sure we get all the panel details and rivets. So we're just getting the final bits of this wash on now. Just a quick check to make sure we've not missed anywhere. And we're just going to leave that now probably an hour just to dry off. So the Flory Models wash is dry on the undersurface, so we're just going to set about removing this. So we're just going to use a bit of kitchen paper and we're just going to gently rub the model surface until that wash comes away. So for any stubborn bits, just a bit of moisture and the wash just comes away. Just make sure, depending on the level of weathering that you wish to depict, that if it's a matte surface it'll be very difficult to remove as the pigment sits in that matte finish and maybe leave some staining. So if it's just a panel line wash, probably better to put it on a gloss surface like we have done here. Just being careful going over the decals so we don't lift those. And as you can see, the effect is coming along quite nicely. Hard to reach areas around these gear doors and things, we don't want to damage those, so we can just use a cotton bud. Just to get into there. So, tailplanes. Just getting into the base of the tailplane there so that we don't leave any unsightly tide marks or heavier collection of the wash, which looks odd. And then the rest of that tailplane. And then we're just going round just making sure we've got no heavily stained areas, because once we've applied the final varnish coat you're never going to remove that. Just getting into all the nooks and crannies where we've got a heavier build up. Like so. So the model's now sitting on its undercarriage. As we saw in the earlier part, it was a tail sitter, so we simply dropped some weight down the intake and then glued that FOD guard in with some crystal clear, and the same with the rear jet pipe. So we need to look at starting getting some of the smaller detailed items onto the model now. I just noticed a bit of wash. So just making sure we've got that wing root there as well, that the wash hasn't tracked along panel lines and collected, and it just makes it look a little bit darker and unsightly. There we go. So turning our attention away from the airframe for a moment, and we're going to make some seat belts for the basic ejector seat contained in the kit. This really does need replacing either with a resin example from someone like Quick Boost or Airres, or even a Dard etch set just to furnish that and make it look a little bit better. So what we've done, we've got the Infinity cutting board out, and we've just put some Tamiya tape on there, and we're just going to cut some lengths that look about seatbelt width. Just going to pick these up now with the tweezers. And add them to the seat. So once we've got the right sort of length, just going to snip them off, and you can twist and manipulate the tape to look a bit more fabricy. So I'm just going to trim the excess off. Nothing special, just a representation of the seat belts there. And we're just going to make the lap belts in the same manner. Like so. And we're just going to paint those now. Tamiya XF49 khaki. So there we have our very quick and inexpensive seat belts, just to give a representation that's not too overpowering for the detail found in the kit. So now the paint's had a chance to dry, we've just added a little bit of wash to those tape seat belts, and that just provides a sort of representation of the harness without being too detailed in comparison to the rest of the cockpit. So we'll just set that aside to dry now before we glue it in place. So I've just been sat at the bench and I've put the final bits on the Sabre. So we've added the cockpit glass, and we've done that with micro crystal clear. That'll take a few hours to finally set, but it'll dry clear and won't run the risk of fogging the clear parts. We've added the speed brakes, drop tanks, and the pitot tube. And then we've finally given the model a coat of GX113 Mr. Colour Flat, and that's just now going to be left to dry. So with the matte varnish dry, I've quickly painted the pitot up and added the taxi lights, landing lights under the nose there. So that concludes Airfix's 1/48 scale Canadair Sabre F4 build. I'm just off now to take some studio photos for you to look at, so join me after that when we'll mention our closing comments. So overall, we've got a nice looking model sat on the workbench at the end of it. The fit issues, perhaps we shouldn't be experiencing issues like that with modern tooling methods. However, they are easily overcome and they don't look too bad once the model's been finished, especially those ammunition gun bays each side of the fuselage. The cockpit is very basic for a modern tool kit. I'm really surprised at Airfix not offering the modeler more. However, they can be easily addressed with items now from the Eddard range of etch metal sets. However, given the price that Airfix are charging for this kit, I think the modeler would be better looking at either the Academy or Hasegawa options in that order. Nonetheless, still looks pretty good, and it'll sit nicely next to the Airfix Hunter and Meteor that I've previously built. So until next time everyone, please stay well, stay safe and take care.